Good evening. It is 6:32, and I would like to call the City of West Hollywood Planning Commission meeting to order. And I would like to start with the land acknowledgement. The West Hollywood City Council acknowledges that the land on which we gather and that is currently known as the City of West Hollywood is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tonga and Gabrielino Quiche peoples. And I would now like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and would Commissioner Cavallero please lead us in the pledge? Thank you. And item 3 on today's agenda is the administration of the oath of office to newly appointed Planning Commission member Andrew Solomon.
Hello, good evening. I do it up there. Hello.
Okay, you ready?
Do I-
Yep.
Okay.
So repeat after me. I, Andrew Solomon,
I, Andrew Solomon,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that while serving in the office
that while serving in the office
as a member of the Planning Commission
as a member of the Planning Commission
of the City of West Hollywood,
of the City of West Hollywood,
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Byers, and it's always lovely to have you here. Okay, Secretary Gillig, are we ready for roll call?
We are, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner Solomon.
Here.
Commissioner Matos. Here. Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Here.
Commissioner Carvalero.
Here.
Vice Chair Gregoire.
Here.
Chair Lombardi.
Here.
And we have a 7-member quorum.
It has been a while, and welcome, Commissioner Solomon. It's lovely to have you here, and I'm excited to have you join. So we're now on item number 5 of the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the agenda, or are there any modification requests?
I'll move unless there are any changes.
I'll second.
I'm going to say it's moved by Jones and seconded by Matos. But very close.
Commissioner Hoopengarner? You're voting, please. Okay, thank you. And the motion passes, approving the agenda for July 18th, 2024, unanimous.
Thank you. Item number 7 is approval of the minutes, and we have 2. Item 6A is the certified transcription from the April 18th, 2024 meeting, And I'd just like to start to see if there's any corrections, clarifications, or anything around these minutes. Yes, Commissioner Hoopengarner.
I just had some very minor changes that I've already passed on to Mr. Gillig, mostly relating to how things are. There's a bunch of places where the two speakers are put in the same line instead of in new lines, and how things are called out. And so David already is aware of those and can make those corrections.
Yes, staff will make those housekeeping corrections, and we also do want to read one into the record on page 11 of 155. Commissioner Hoopengarner, we just want to put square brackets around one of the words in her statement. So it will be, I deliberate will be in brackets, that we ought to make a motion to approve staff's report.
I made a joke and it didn't translate very well.
Yeah, so that's why we have the square brackets in.
Okay.
With
Anything?
that, if there's no one else, I would go ahead and move it.
Anyone else? Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of April 18th?
I just did.
Oh, you moved. Okay, second.
I'll second. Whatever. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll take the vice chair.
Thank you, and the motion passes, noting 5 ayes. We have Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Solomon abstaining from this vote, approving the minutes, the certified transcription for April 18th, 2024, as amended.
Okay, and then Commissioner Carvalero, I just want to confirm, are you also voting yes, which is fine, I just want to...
I did.
Yeah, I think that you were...
He was present.
Oh,
just
okay,
not,
never mind.
He had to recuse from the one.
Got it, okay. For the rest of the minutes, makes sense. Thank you. Okay. Item 6B, June 20th, 2024 meeting minutes. Do we have any clarifications, questions?
Staff would like to read into the record 2 minor corrections. On page 4 of 9, on the second paragraph, it's stated the Thunderbird Hotel. We want to strike hotel and name it Thunderbird Inn. And on the third paragraph from the bottom, it reads, she clarified there is no increase. So we're going to insert RE into THERE, just to clarify that word. So it'll read, she clarified there is no excuse. And that's all staff has.
Okay, thank you.
I move approval as amended.
Moved by the vice chair,
I'll second.
seconded by Hoopengarner.
And the motion passes, noting 6 ayes, and Commissioner Solomon abstaining from this vote, approving the minutes of June 20th, 2024, as amended.
Thank you. And now we move on to item 8, which is the director's report.
Chair, we have a public comment before.
Oh, sorry, public comment. Do we have any public speakers?
We do. Our first public speaker here in chambers will be David Eichmann. David, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Commissioners. David Eichmann. I'm a resident of Los Angeles and a business owner here in the city. I'm also a member of the city's Transportation and Mobility Commission, which is the main reason I come before you tonight. First of all, I do want to congratulate Commissioner Solomon on his appointment. Our meetings are the 3rd Wednesday of every month at 6:30 at City Hall. And I'm asking you to be extended ears and eyes for the city. Now, obviously, as commissioners, you know full well a lot of the transportation issues. In fact, they intersect often with planning. Hot button issues currently, bike lanes, personal delivery, robots. But if you see any things that you, intersections, stop signs, where you think there could be improvements, then please let me or a member of the transportation staff know. It's often commissioners that can see things and make suggestions to improve transportation issues in the city. So thank you.
Thank you. And Chair, that is our last public speaker.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 8 now for real, which is the director's report, which will be presented by Nick Marichich, Community Development Director.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Planning Commissioners. Hope you can hear me okay through the mask. Nick Marichich, Community Development Director. I want to start by saying thank you to past Chair Carvalero for his leadership on the commission over the past year, and congratulations again to our new Chair Lombardi and Vice Chair Gregoire. I also want to say congratulations and welcome to our newest commissioner, Commissioner Solomon, and we look forward to working with you. I hope everyone's having a great summer so far and that you had a safe and fun 4th of July holiday, and I do have a couple of items to report to you this evening. The first is that as part of the ongoing effort to develop the WehoTV strategic plan, the city is hosting 2 upcoming events. The first is an in-person community meeting on Saturday, July 20th from 11 to 2 at the West Hollywood Aquatic and Recreation Center. This is a free event that will include informational exhibits, community organizations, food, and live entertainment. And community members are encouraged to stop by at any point during the meeting to learn more about the WeHo Strategic Plan project, to provide feedback, and to connect with fellow community members. In addition to this in-person meeting, again, the date Saturday, July 20th from 11 to 2, there will also be a virtual community meeting on Monday, July 29th at 6 p.m. via Zoom. For more information, you can go to the project webpage, which is engage.weho.org/WeHo Strategic Plan. And then secondly, you may already be aware, but the City Council at their June 24th meeting voted to approve increasing the stipend amount that's paid to advisory board and commission members to $100 per meeting, not to exceed $200 per month. And this will take effect January 1st of 2025. Lastly, I'll just note that I will be absent from the next Planning Commission meeting on August 1st, but you'll be in excellent hands, as always, with our planning managers, Jennifer and Francisco. And that concludes my report for tonight. Thank you, as always, for your service. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our Community Development Director? No? Okay, thank you. That moves us to item number 9, which is consent calendar, and there are no items. And then that moves us to item 10A, public hearings under section 1, which is projects that are subject to the Housing Accountability Act. And item 10A, our only item under section 1, is the 1006 to 1010 North Edinburgh Avenue. And we'll be holding a public hearing regarding a request to demolish 2 dwelling units on 2 contiguous parcels and construct a new 4-story, 17-unit residential building over a subterranean parking garage for the property at 1006, 1010 North Edinburgh in West Hollywood. And I think we'll start with the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
And,
good evening.
Actually, let me just do some housekeeping while we get started here too, just to slow down for a minute, especially since we have a new commissioner and a new chair. So in terms of order of the meeting, and for anyone in the public too, just to understand this process, so we'll always start with recusals. I believe there are none tonight. And then disclosures, which we can do in a moment here before the staff report. And then after the staff report, opportunity for any clarification type questions of staff, followed by the design review report from the design review subcommittee. Then the applicant's presentation. Then we'll have a minute for clarification type questions from the commission to the applicants, and then we'll open up the public comment portion of the hearing. After that, the applicant will have 5 minutes opportunity for rebuttal, and then the commission can get into more in-depth questions of the applicant. before we close the public hearing and move into actual deliberation. So with that being said, I would like to start and ask if there are any disclosures at this time. Commissioner Solomon?
You start with you guys.
Yeah, yes.
So disclosures for this particular project, I met with the applicant and discussed items within the staff report. I've also walked the site, and I also want to make an overarching disclosure for my service here on the Planning Commission. Two organizational moves that I made as a result of coming onto the Planning Commission. First, I was a member of the Public Facilities, Infrastructure, and Recreation Commission. Leading up to this, I have resigned that role. Per our city ordinance, you can only serve on one commission at a time. And then secondly, I think some of you may recognize me because I used to bother you on that side of the dais when I was the chapter lead of the West Hollywood chapter of Abundant Housing Los Angeles. The name of the chapter is Building WeHo. Upon being appointed to the Planning Commission by Councilmember Byers, I resigned from that position as the chapter lead and as a member of Building WeHo, the Abundant Housing chapter for West Hollywood. Just wanted to put that out there for all projects and my service here. I take this role seriously, and I understand the quasi-judicial nature of it, and I want to make sure that there is no speculation about my being biased or having been disclosed any sort of project before it comes to us here at these hearings.
Thank you, Commissioner Solomon. Does anyone else have any disclosures at this time?
I do.
Commissioner Jones?
Oh, Commissioner McGonner can go.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Just, I walked the site and reviewed the project there.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jones?
Yes, I did have a meeting with the applicant's representative, and we discussed items contained in the staff report.
Thank you. And Commissioner Matos?
I spoke with members of the public regarding matters contained in the staff report.
Thank you. Is that all? Okay, staff report. I think we're ready now.
Great. Thank you. Good evening, Chair Lombardi, Vice Chair Gregoire, and members of the Commission. Welcome, Commissioner Solomon, and welcome back, Commissioner Jones. My name is Antonio Castillo, Senior Planner with the Current and Historic Preservation Planning Division. I have a brief, maybe a 6-minute presentation for you, giving you a brief overview of the project. As you mentioned, Chair, the item before you this evening is a request to demolish 2 dwelling units and all accessory structures on 2 contiguous parcels, merger of both parcels, and construction of a 4-story, 17-unit residential building with 2 very low-income units and 1 moderate-income unit over a single-level subterranean parking garage. The request also includes a density bonus and 3 density bonus waivers, including 1 for an additional story, a 2nd waiver for a reduction in the front yard setback, and the 3rd for a waiver of the additional 6-foot front yard setback for the 2nd and upper stories. The approximately 12,000 square foot project site located in the R3B zoning district is located on the east side of Edinburgh Avenue between Romaine Street immediately to the south and Santa Monica Boulevard further to the north. The neighborhood, the neighboring property to the south is a corner property located in the city of Los Angeles, and that's also a single-family dwelling. The site is currently developed with an approximately 1,500 square foot single-story, single-family dwelling with a rear detached garage. And the northernmost parcel at 1010 at Edinburgh is currently developed with a 1,200 square foot, 1-story single-family, also with a rear detached garage. Both units are currently occupied by tenants, and the units will be required to be removed from the rental market prior to issuance of any permits by the building division. The existing land uses surrounding the project site are mostly multifamily residential uses, except for the single-family residence immediately to the south in Los Angeles, and the Laurel Cinematic Arts Creative Tech Magnet School across Romaine Street, also in Los Angeles. Just a few illustrations here on of the project itself. The construction of the residential building with the 17 units is within 4 stories. This includes a single-level subterranean parking garage. The project requests to utilize a density bonus for providing 3 affordable units. The building includes 1 one-bedroom unit and 16 two-bedroom units. These are renderings that are within your packet as the exhibit. This is looking southeast on Edinburgh. This is just looking straight at the site, and this looking north up on Edinburgh. The ground floor contains common rooms in the form of a gym, a business center, a community room, and the community room opens to the outdoor common open space area in the front of the building. A total of 1,960 square feet of common open space will be provided within a rooftop patio, including 629 square feet on the ground floor within the front area, as well as 1,331 square feet on the rooftop. The subterranean garage is accessed from a single driveway on the southernmost portion of the site, and will provide 24 parking spaces, in addition to storage areas, mechanical rooms, trash enclosures, and other utilities. By providing the 3 affordable units, the project qualifies for a maximum of a 50% density bonus and 3 concessions, and an unlimited number of waivers necessary to ensure physical construction of the project. The density bonus translates to a bonus of 6 units, or 17 units as proposed for this project. As such, the applicant is requesting a density bonus and 3 waivers to achieve the proposed project. Waiver number 1, this is to increase from 3 stories and 35 feet in height, a maximum for this property in an R3B zone, to allow 1 additional story and an additional 12 feet in height for a total of 4 stories and 47 feet in height. Waiver number 2 is a waiver to reduce the front yard setback from 22 feet 2 inches to 15 feet. The adjacent multifamily building to the north has a front yard setback of roughly 15 feet, and the single-family dwelling to the south has a front setback of approximately 30 feet. And so the required front setback is an average of the 2, or 22 feet 2 inches in this case. Waiver number 3 would be waiving the required 6-foot additional front yard setback for the second and upper stories. The intent of the additional upper stories, the additional 6-foot setback for the upper stories is to provide modulation for project's street frontage. The project achieves this intent in that the building's massing is modulated by breaking up the facade into multiple planes, which breaks up the scale of the building. And it's staff's assessment that the requested waivers of development standards are appropriate and consistent with what is contemplated by the state density bonus law and the city's ministerial requirements with respect to those requests. In conclusion, staff supports the project, given that the project is well suited for the site and zoning district. It's thoughtfully designed and complementary to the context of the neighborhood, meets the applicable development standards for a housing project using density bonus waivers, and provides a net increase of 15 units to the city's housing stock. under state law, projects that meet objective design standards under the Housing Accountability Act must be approved unless there is a documented health and safety impact. A project with a density bonus and waivers is still considered consistent with the objective standards. And therefore, and consistent with state law, limits on discretion for qualifying affordable housing development projects, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the project request, subject to the findings and conditions of approval set forth in the draft resolution. Before I conclude, I would like to propose a revision to the conditions of approval section in your draft staff report. Specifically, I'll start with condition 3.12. This condition is for the number of parking spaces for the affordable units. Staff's recommending that, consistent with the market rate units, that the parking include half a parking space for the affordable units, similar to the market rate. So the language would be modified, as you see on your screen. And if that revision is acceptable, I would further recommend that we combine that language with condition 3.7, which pertains to parking for the affordable unit as well. This might help keep these two conditions pertaining to parking and affordable units together. And so the recommendation is to strike out or omit condition 3.12 in your draft resolution and revise condition 3.7, and that would read, parking for the affordable inclusionary housing component, including parking for tenants, guests, and supporting staff, shall be provided free of charge in perpetuity and shall be provided with the same parking space ratio provided to market rate units of the same unit type based on bedroom count, including no fewer than half parking spaces each for the 3 affordable units. And with that, this concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions. And I also want to mention that the applicant, the project architect, and the landscape architect are available for questions as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So I know that we've looked at combining some of the questions with the applicant, and just to keep things kind of consistent with what we've done in the past for the time being, although we're still looking at that. And since this might have some complexities right now, if there's any clarification questions of staff, this would be a good time to ask, but I would like us to keep it at just clarification items. Otherwise, we can move on to the applicant's presentation and public comment and get into more robust questions. Are there any clarification questions at this time for the staff report or of staff? Commissioner Solomon, do you have?
I guess, look, I'm new here, and there's a lot of I'm so new, I don't even know how to turn on my microphone. There'll be a lot of questions that I have that are kind of, explain it to me like I'm 5. But question for staff is that, why is this on our agenda tonight? Why do we have a discretionary review to approve or deny this project?
The project, the municipal code requires for projects that are 11 units or more to be approved by the Planning Commission by resolution. So this project would not be administratively approved at staff level or at the director's level because of the number of units.
So if it's R3 and 11 units or more, it comes here.
Correct.
Given that this property is right on the city limit line, 10 feet south is the city of LA, how does our West Hollywood's discretionary review of a building of this type in this zoning designation, how does that compare to the city of Los Angeles? Like if this project were just one, not even one block south, one parcel south, would an equivalent planning commission of the city of Los Angeles also have a discretionary review of the project?
The parcel in Los Angeles at the corner is zoned R4, so that would be also high density.
Something that's equivalent to R3 in LA.
Actually, higher density than so. The parcel to the south could potentially be, while it's a physically a smaller site, it would have the same, or it would have more. It could potentially have more density than the density allowed in the R3 in West Hollywood.
I guess I'm wondering, you told me what the standards for discretionary review are for the city of West Hollywood. What are the standards when it reaches the level where it comes to us? What's the level in the city of Los Angeles that it needs to reach to come to a discretionary body?
Commissioner, I just want to note that just in the line of staying focused on this item right here, this may be challenging for staff to note or get into right now, unless legal maybe wants to note something briefly, or Jennifer Alkire, maybe you have something to say. We could also, this might be a larger topic for discussion that we could bring up during commissioner comments, but just to keep things moving.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chair. Just a really quick answer. We don't know the details of the zoning in Los Angeles, and I think it's pretty complex over the span of the whole city, but generally it is about 50 net new units that would trigger Planning Commission review.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarification right now on the staff report? Yes, Commissioner Hoopengartner.
Tony, can you, I saw your proposed changes to 3.7 and 3.12 on the parking. By my math, there is one unit that will not have parking based upon the way this is designed with tandem, et cetera. So how is that going to work with the half a unit? There's only one bedroom unit in the project. Is that de facto saying that that one bedroom is not going to have parking?
I think that would be a question I would want to ask the architect in how they're going to manage the assignment of parking spaces on the site. I mean, it's 17 units. So presumably they can all have a parking space at least. However, if it's managed where two separate units are sharing a tandem aisle or space, you know, I don't know if the applicant has can share their intent of how they plan to manage that. But otherwise, there's more parking spaces than what the minimum that the code requires in this case.
Okay. The applicant's plans show that they have an average unit size for the market rate units. Does that mean that the inclusionary units have already been identified?
I believe the applicant has been in discussions with the rent stabilization and housing staff, but the 3 units have not been identified yet. I think there's an intent or there's an idea of which ones there would be, and the idea is to have them spread throughout the 4 stories. I think that's a question also I think the architect or the applicant might be able to answer, but that wasn't part of their application.
Okay. I'll leave the rest of the questions for later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Should we move on to the applicant's presentation? Okay. If the applicant's ready, please approach the podium, state your name and city of residence. Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and City staff. My name is Jorge Nariño, resident of Los Angeles. Let me go ahead and get started here. First, I want to congratulate Commissioners Lombardi and Gregoire on their chair and vice chair positions, and also congratulate and welcome Commissioner Solomon, and welcome back Commissioner Jones. I'll get right into the presentation. I'm representing Levin Nariño Architects. With me is Stephanie Harris of Seed Group, Landscape Architects, and also our land use attorney, Stephen Jameson of Solomon, Saltzman, and Jameson. Here's the project site on Edinburgh Avenue. It's 2 lots. For orientation, we are almost one block south of Santa Monica Boulevard. The street consists mostly of 2- and 3-story multifamily buildings built out to the setbacks. The boundary of our West Hollywood is at the south property line. Seen here is the blue line. The parcel immediately to the south of us, which is the last parcel on our block, is in
Sorry,
the city
one
of
moment.
LA.
We want to make sure the screen is up. We can reset your time if needed to.
What happened?
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right. Here is the project site on Edinburgh Avenue. It is 2 lots. For orientation, we are 1 block south of Santa Monica Boulevard. The street consists mostly of 2- and 3-story multifamily buildings built out to the setbacks with a consistent street wall. The boundary of West Hollywood is at our south property line, seen here with the blue line. The parcel immediately to the south of us, as Tony mentioned, which is the last parcel on our block, is in the city of Los Angeles. Here's the basic massing of the site. There's a slight site slope of about 2.7% from the north property line, sloping down to the south property line of about 2.5 feet. With density bonus, we start with 4 stories. We're entitled to the 4-story under the state density bonus waiver, not a concession. We're dividing the facade in half, which reflects the grain of the urban fabric, being that this is a double lot. We've established the entry near the center of the building mass, aligned with the ground floor, with the sidewalk at that point, so there's a direct connection to the building. We then start to carve away the building mass. At the front yard, the north half of the building steps back to create a garden area on the ground floor. We cut vertical slot to break up the facades and add projecting balconies. We articulate the street facade with corner windows, projecting balconies, and shade awnings. The vertical slot allows for natural ventilation, windows, and terraces. Allows for natural shading of windows and terraces, as well as natural ventilation by thermal convection. Most of our units take advantage of our corner placement to benefit from natural ventilation as well. Additionally, we have opened our internal corridor and are now taking advantage of natural breezes and passive cooling. Our garden area at the ground floor and partial rooftop area, as well as the projecting balconies and cuts in the facade, create usable open space. This shows additional sustainable measures by our project. The green on the ground floor shows our new trees and site permeability. On the roof, we are showing area for photovoltaic that will provide for 15% of the building load. Here's a better look at our site permeability. In green, our garage is pulled away from the property lines on 3 sides, allowing for natural soils for our landscaping. We provide 6 new trees in these natural soils, seen here in dark green at the front yard and both rear corners. The existing trees in the parkway shown here will remain. I'll also note that we are removing an existing driveway, which will provide an extra street parking spot. Our original parking layout had 24 tandem spots and 6 single parking spaces. DRS asked us to reduce the number of tandem layout to improve maneuverability, and we did just that. Here, our new garage layout is 24 cars with only 16 in tandem. You can clearly see the unexcavated area outside of retaining walls we have for site permeability and our trees, including at the rear where we have notched the retaining walls for the trees and for future access if the power poles need to be replaced. Our space number 16, noted here with the red asterisk, is labeled to be used as a staging space in addition to loading and rideshare. Previously, our bike parking and electrical room was on the first floor. With the reduction in tandem spaces, we are now able to move these 2 spaces down into the northwest area of the parking level. Here's our first floor. There are 2 units plus amenities shown here in gray. DRS made a few suggestions we have implemented. At the lobby, at the entry, we have added a community lounge right off the lobby. At the rear, we have added more planting to the exterior gym area, which will help to make the space visually more green and will help screen the lit planter wall. Building storage was moved from the community lounge to the rear of the building into the gym area. The transformer has been located to the northwest center corner of our garden and screened by planting on 3 sides. And we have opened up our internal corridors so it is naturally ventilated. Our lid biofiltration planter is at the rear of the property, but it will flow the filtered water to the street by gravity. We're not using pumps for this purpose. We're trying to reduce energy and increase sustainability wherever we can. Here's our typical floor plan. You can see the deep vertical slot at the south and the corner placement of our units, which help provide cross ventilation. We're providing 3 affordable units, 2 very low and 1 moderate unit. As our project is within the 11 to 20 unit density, we qualify for providing affordable units at the minimum 1 bedroom units, 650 square foot size. We have 1 affordable on the first floor, 1 on the second, and 1 on the third. The first floor unit is a 1 bedroom at 703 square feet. The other 2 units on the second and the third floor are 2 bedroom units at 957 square feet. They're dispersed as required. Staff has confirmed our project fully complies with zoning and the housing ordinance. Here's our roof plan. At the northeast corner, we have seating areas and a barbecue area. This area is set back from the edge of the roof almost 4.5 feet, shown here as the area in the dark gray, plus an additional 2 feet for planters with landscaping that will provide a physical buffer and provide visual privacy for both the tenants and the neighbors. Shade is provided by a fabric structure at the northeast, as well as the shade from our fire stair walls that are at the east and at the north. Our mechanical equipment is at the west and the south, which is a full floor above the roof of our north and their east neighbors. None of the equipment extends above the parapet. With the load noise on this equipment we're using now, there will be no noise impact from our neighbors, from the mechanical equipment. The photovoltaic structures shade the condensers for better cooling efficiency. All of these structures are pulled back from the roof perimeter and surrounded by a stepped parapet at the request of the city architect. This was to help lower the visual scale of the building from a pedestrian perspective. Here's a rendering from the southeast. To reduce the visual mass and reflect the urban fabric, the facade is broken up into 3 different materials. Dark gray composite panel to the north, wood panels to the south, the stone in the middle. This is our street facing elevation for clarity, and this is our material board. I'll go back real quick. Here you can see with the north half of the building being pushed back, the material being a dark gray panel, you can see how it recedes and allows the front yard trees to be in focus. At the right, you can see our wood paneling in the middle, and in the middle you can see our stone. This view gives you a sense of how the materials and landscaping and the projecting awnings help to mark the building entry. Here's the building material sheet without any landscape or trees. Again, the building sits on a light gray stone base, dark gray panels to the north, wood panels to the south, and stone in the middle. Here's a 3D view of the southeast. You can see the ventilation and shading slot at the south, which is the left side of the image, and the changes in materials that break up the massing. You can see the effect of the stepping back the parapet has at the roof. The parapet height is barely perceptible when looking up from the sidewalk level. You can see that even on the rear facade, that's on the right side of the image, that we have articulation with our open stairs and our recessed alcoves with projecting balconies. This is a rendering of the rear corner from the southeast. This is a rendering from the northeast rear corner. And here is the street view from the northwest. Again, for clarity, we're not showing the existing street trees as they would obscure most of the building. You can see how setting back the north half of the building allows the garden to soften the transition from public to private realm. You can also see by stepping the parapet back, you can't see the 3 or 4 feet of parapet height from the sidewalk. They're barely perceptible here, right over the stone area in the middle. And finally, here's the effect of our exterior lighting at night. Again, for clarity, we're not showing the existing street trees. Most of the lighting is placed in the alcoves of the balconies to prevent light spillover. In addition, the exterior fixtures are shielded. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask at this time, noting that we should probably also move on to public comment, if there's any clarification type questions on the applicant's presentation, if anyone has anything. We want to move on to public comment? Okay, great. So, David, do we have any public speakers today?
We do, Chair. We have one in council chambers, and we also have, I think, a couple on Zoom. We'll take council chambers first. If there is anybody on Zoom that would like to speak on this item, please *9 for me if you're calling in. If you're on the platform, just raise the hand and we'll call on you and give you 3 minutes. Our first public speaker here in council chambers will be Stephen Jameson.
Okay.
Okay, we have no public speakers in council chambers then. We'll move to the Zoom platform.
Great.
Our next public speaker is Lorraine Polsky. Are you on the line?
And Lorraine, just for clarity, you have 3 minutes of time to speak and address the Planning Commission.
Okay. I've been a resident and I live approximately 3 buildings up from this projected project. And we are just so opposed to having this monstrosity. It doesn't belong in our neighborhood. It's obnoxious. The owner is a Beverly Hills developer. This serves nothing but his own pockets. And it's really not wanted in our community. The parking alone in the area, you can't find parking anywhere. The construction alone is going to be so disruptive. There's a building just 2 blocks south. They have so many vacancies, they can't even get people to pay these exorbitant rents to fill these buildings. The fact that they want to do this, I understand you want one affordable housing unit does not equate the massive just disruption that it's going to cause to all the residents. You're building this, it's going to overlook an elementary school. How do you think these children that go to our school are going to fare in this disruptive construction? Just the parking alone in this area. You know, it's very busy in the mornings with parents dropping off their kids. This is going to be very unsafe. There's 2 houses now that are beautiful and they fit in with the neighborhood. I don't know why you have to tear them down and do this project when there are so many open luxury apartments that are not even affordable to people in the area. I know they've had this problem before when they've erected other buildings, and it's just going to be too populated here. It's already busy. And it doesn't belong, and we don't want it. We don't want the disruption, and the only benefit it has is to the man who is trying to make this project happen, because it's all financial gain. And when are we going to stop and actually do something that helps the community instead of build these luxury buildings that just don't belong and will impede our enjoyment of living? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is a caller with the last 4 digits, 5968. Please dial *6 to unmute yourself, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Terry. I live in the building across the street. And this is a very quiet neighborhood with the low density of 1, 2, and 3-story buildings, and most of the buildings are only about 8 to 10 units. So this is twice the size of anything that's on the block. And the disruption from the demolition and the building, I mean, how long is this going to take? And with the trucks and the noise and the pollution, I mean, this is going to be very disruptive to the whole neighborhood. Also, our block has several buildings with many vacancies already. So this is just adding a glut of empty units in the area, and all the noise and pollution to the school children, and the trucks and the congestion for people trying to get to and from to pick their kids up from school. And it just doesn't belong in this neighborhood. And there's plenty of other places where it could be built. We don't want it. We don't want the disruption. And it's probably just going to sit empty. We have a building across the street that's been empty for 5 years. And up the street, they want to build an 8-story building. So that means there's going to be 17 units, and I don't know how many are going to be in the 8-story building. And, we already have too many vacancies on this block. This is a very modest neighborhood, and we don't need the big luxury, I have it all and you don't, in your face, buildings on our block. A lot of these people along here are rent-controlled apartments, and this is just the wrong area for this type of structure. And I think that the Planning Commission needs to take more things into consideration besides just, what the builders want, what the developers want. West Hollywood is changing, and we don't like everything that's going on. We don't get to have a say-so. We don't get to vote for these things. And they just get pushed through, and everybody is unhappy. Look at the French Marketplace, and sitting there empty for 9 years. They got forced out of there. I mean, you're just destroying the culture and the fabric and the ambiance in our city. And we don't need the extra density. So I'm very, very opposed to this construction.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker will be caller with the last 4 digits, 9751. Please dial *6 to unmute. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Jamie Francis Wendell, resident of West Hollywood for the last 13 years. I just wanted to speak not in alignment with the previous callers. I used to live off of Romaine on the east side, just east of Edinburgh and Laurel, and I can't concur with them because there has to be a builder's remedy to the lack of affordable housing in this city. I understand they want to have a piece and slice of their village, like I do. I get that. However, if you have no takers and people willing to build affordable housing, and people are being priced out of their rent control units, what is the alternative? I've seen that. I would have been priced out of my rent control unit, which I would have because of landlord planning loopholes, only to try to qualify for an affordable unit, which I did, barely being on the list for 7 years. I'm still on the West Hollywood wait list, and this is now going on 12 years. So I understand they're talking about ambiance, our peaceful community, our nice tree-lined street, because they have what they have, and they've been there for decades. And they're not thinking of the future. Maybe they're thinking, well, people have more money, which I understand. The city's being gentrified. However, what about those people who don't have money, who are being priced out on a monthly basis? Luckily for them, they're rent controlled. But what about those people who are on Section 8, who don't qualify because the Costa-Hawkins are moved into a unit? Excuse me, hello? So with that being said, they cannot be speaking and talking about NIMBYism. This is absolute NIMBYism. And I don't approve of that because we have to have solutions, housing remedy, where the state has said West Hollywood is failing, along with Beverly Hills, and you cannot achieve that with ADUs. So I understand if the scope of the property and maybe the design, but they can't be pulling children, you're going to traumatize them, you're going to affect our way of living. Well, tell them and ask them, what's the solution? Not in my backyard, but somewhere else, in someone else's backyard in the city, and then someone else complains, not in my backyard. That's all I hear. From Weatherly Project to what's happening in Crescent Heights, everything is at least not in my backyard. Well, I have construction zones around me, and I understand you have to accept that. But this is ridiculous. This is a city, not a little village that you wanted to have a slice of your own. So stop being selfish. And understand you can't just have it your way because you live on that street. Too bad. Construction happens. Things that happen, developments happen. If they don't, then people get priced out or we don't have our options of where to move or where to live in West Hollywood. We just get priced out. So common sense-wise, at least use the common sense of why we can't live here because it's getting gentrified. We need affordable units. So there should be more included. I will be honest, 1 and 2 is not going to achieve that. But let's not say, not in my neighborhood, not in my street. That's ridiculous.
Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else in the room? If you'd like to make a public comment, please dial *9. Chair?
That is all for public comment.
And that's our last public comment.
Okay, thank you. So the applicant has the opportunity for a 5-minute rebuttal. I do want to make one note of clarification. I believe I heard the first remote caller note 1 affordable housing unit, and I think the presentation noted that there were 3 inclusionary housing units, just for clarity there. But does the applicant want to take 5 minutes or up to 5 minutes for any rebuttal comments?
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Stephen Jameson. I'm an attorney on behalf of the applicant, and I'll just make my comments short. There is a particular letter that I wanted to point out that I know that's part of your packet that I think explains very nicely exactly what this issue is and what the last caller was actually pointing out. And this one's from the California Housing Defense Fund, and you'll see it as part of your exhibits. It's a July 16, 2024 letter. And I'll just point out to you that in the second to the last paragraph, one of the items that they point out, which I think is relevant here tonight, is, as it says, as you are well aware, California remains in the throes of a statewide crisis-level housing shortage. New housing, such as this, is a public benefit. And I'd like to point that out so that it becomes a part of your record and something that you consider. And this is an excellent project that's gone through many, many layers of review. The review has been done very carefully, and we'd urge you to approve this project. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. At this time, are there any questions for the applicant? And I guess we could also have questions of staff if the applicant's not prepared to answer questions. Would anyone like to go first? Okay, Vice Chair Gregoire.
I was just curious to ask the applicant about the situation with parking and how you are planning to deal with the assignment of parking spaces for the project.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner, for the question. Previously, we had 30 parking spaces, and we reduced that down to 24. We were planning on one of the affordables. We're just not going to have one of the parking spaces. If the as is, right now we have a parking space number 16, which was shown in the presentation with the red asterisk as the loading and rideshare space, and then we have a loading space right next to it as well. We could change those back and add some more parking if that's required, but we were looking to just not have a parking space for one of those units, for the affordable units, and just treat them as the market rates at half per space. We initially wanted to have more parking, and I know state AB 2097 allows us to actually waive all minimum parking standards. That's not what the owner wants to do here. But as we have lost 6 parking spaces, we're kind of limited on what he wants to do.
So currently, the idea is one unit wouldn't have a parking space?
That's correct.
Which unit would that be? Would it be the 1-bedroom? Or
It would be the 1-bedroom.
is that one of the affordable?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm having trouble getting my microphone to work, so bear with me. Anyone else have questions? Applicant questions? Yes, Commissioner Solomon.
Thank you for being here tonight. Would you mind telling us how you came about the in the floor plan layout, the decision to only go with 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units?
Sure. Well, mostly it came from the client's pro forma. He believes that 2 bedrooms were a good fit for the neighborhood, being close to the downtown area. We usually try to design these 2 bedrooms as dual masters, so they could either be a friend situation or a partner situation as well. They can also be as a small family for child and the parents. The 1 bedroom was just really more a space that we also wanted to provide for a different price point, but also worked with the amenities on the first floor in the layout. Previously, we had some other spaces in there, which we had the electrical room and the bike parking, which we moved down, and we kind of moved stuff around on the first floor in the amenity spaces for DRS.
Thank you. I see in your layout you have staircase on the north side, and then on the back side of the building on the east side, there's fire code.
Correct.
Says that you have to have
Yes.
2 staircases in this space. There are efforts to reform, to bring the state to where the fire code would only allow for 1 staircase. If this were a single point access building, how much more living space would you be able to dedicate to housing rather than the common space of the double-loaded corridor?
Thank you for the question. Yes, we are familiar with that study that the state is doing with I believe it's the state fire marshal. We could probably reorganize some of our units to be able to add 1 unit on each floor, so it'd be an additional 4 units total for the project. And they would obviously be smaller units, probably studios, but there is a demand for those as well.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Sure.
Any other questions of the applicant? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Let's start out with the easy one. Is the landscape architect here?
She is, yes. Would you like to come up?
I wanted to clarify that you have specified 4 Rhaphiolepis trees.
Correct.
And can you please state your name and city
Oh,
of
I'm so
residence
sorry. My
for the
name's
record?
Stephanie Harris. I live in Long Beach.
Thank you.
However, our code requires canopy trees. And a Rhaphiolepis, including the majestic beauty that you've called out here, has a height of 10 feet and a width of 10 feet. It's a shrub. It's not a canopy tree. Is that the correct call out on the plans?
The call out on the plan is for a variety called Majestic Beauty. It does depend on what site you consult, but 15 to 20 feet, more like 15. But so here was our concern. There are 2 existing jacaranda trees in the parkway. They're very large, very beautiful, mature trees. And if you've been to the site, I'm sure you've noticed particularly the one to the north arches very far into the property. We didn't want to specify trees that would conflict with that tree because that would jeopardize the health of both trees. That being said, we could suggest some slightly larger trees, perhaps some things that would get more vertical that would stay out of the way of that very broad jacaranda.
The purpose of the code and the canopy trees is multitudinous, but importantly on that side, it's the west side, it's about shading,
Correct.
and a 10-foot tree shrub is not going to provide that. There are many cultivars that could work that are tall and narrow in that space that still would be a canopy. So and I noticed even in your call-out sheet that you didn't put in the size of the species that you chose because it's a 10-foot by 10-foot shrub. So that's why I wanted to clarify is that exactly what you want? And I will just then reply that that's not a canopy tree. But we'll leave that for our discussion. Okay. Can you help me, and this may be more for Jorge, as to where the calculations are for the permeability on the common open space. I didn't see those on, let's see, you have your permeability calcs on L-1.1, but that does not include any of the common open space of that 629 square feet.
I believe Jorge had done some calculations for us on that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, actually, Tony and I kind of went over this a little bit earlier over the phone. On that sheet, is it L1.2?
L1.1.
L1.1. At the top right of that sheet, you'll notice that there's a breakout calculation that shows the calculation for the whole site, not just for the yards individually. If you then, we did not add the common space, but if you add the 50% required for the common space, which is 300 and rounds up to 315 square feet, the total area goes up to 4,500 and change, and the non-permeable goes up to 2,115 and change. And we're still underneath the 50% maximum, bringing us to 46.2%.
I appreciate that. My question was, where is that permeable space? There is no diagram for that in these plans. And is the 629 square feet 50% permeable?
The code allows, and I'll let staff also, this is part of the conversation I had with Tony, this code allows to be able to use other parts of the site when there's a specific point that does not reach the 50%. So in cumulative, that's why we're looking at the calculation at the top right corner, because that's the whole number of the site, being as we're under 50%, which is our maximum.
I believe the code actually says that of the common open space, it must be 50%.
If the commissioner would please, and Tony, maybe we can bring up the code for that last section, that sentence that you and I spoke about. Because you're correct, it does speak about the open space.
It separates out the common
Yes,
open space.
and it also breaks, and it also talks about specifically the side yards. But then at the end of that code section, it talks about being able to replace that with other portions from the site, and that's what Tony and I spoke about earlier today.
And I'd suggest if staff needs a minute, maybe we come back to that question.
Yeah, and I'll just move on to my other questions. My other questions are actually for staff.
Thank you.
And maybe one of these questions is for Garen, because I believe if Garen wrote the urban design portion of the staff report. On page 16, I'll quote, "The side and rear elevations are seen from many vantage points in this area. However, especially the north and east facade lack the design and compositional sophistication of the front, not only in material richness, but also in formal relief." And the objective standard in our city code in 19.2.0.030 on architectural elevations says specifically, "All elevations of all structures on a site shall be architecturally treated in a compatible manner, including the incorporation within the side and rear elevations of some or all of the design elements used for the main facades." So given that the staff report says it doesn't comply with that, but that is our objective standard in the code, I'm curious as to why staff is recommending that that piece of the code be ignored, skipped over. Can you explain?
Yep, good evening, commissioners. Garen Yawlis, architectural and urban designer with the city. That's a great question, and we've worked with the applicant through many resubmittals of this project on further refining the kind of overall massing, the materiality of this building. I think with that particular section in this report mentioning kind of the articulation of the rear and sides, it was more kind of a general comment on there could be additional refinements to those elevations in relationship to the way that the front elevation has been treated with materiality, but that does not necessarily imply that it didn't meet that code standard, and that wouldn't be our recommendation.
Okay. All right, so then let's move on to the front facade. 19.36.280.b.4 on the front facade says that at least 50% of the front facade of all buildings fronting public streets shall be habitable space. A project shall have at least one private entry into the facade. We've gone down this path a couple of times on a number of previous projects. We've sent them back and said, no, you can't have a laundry room on the front. You have to have an accessible, a living unit, a habitable unit on the front facade with a private entry per the code. This project does not have a habitable unit on the front facade with a private entry. So again, I guess I'm asking, how is that being ignored? I mean, we've returned projects many times for precisely this thing, and this project doesn't have that. So how is this project different from all the other projects?
Yeah, Commissioner, so the habitable requirement is a habitable space, not a living area or a residential unit. The habitable space has been interpreted consistent with the building code to include lobbies, common areas, and so forth. So it's not limited to only residential units.
Excuse me, but where was that interpretation? Because we've never interpreted it that in previous projects. So when did that change, and who changed it?
I can address that. I spoke to the city attorney's office and also my interpretation of this, and this has been the interpretation for quite a while. I think, and you and I spoke on the phone about this. Habitable space is for living, sleeping, eating, or cooking. Next sentence is bathrooms, toilet rooms, closets, halls, storage, utility spaces, and similar areas are not habitable space. I want to be clear, the word private is not in there. So there is no requirement under the California Building Code or our zoning code that that area is considered a private space. I would agree with you, without looking at the specific plans in general, that a laundry room might be more akin to the non-habitable space that I just described. But what we have here is, when we have a pretty basic definition, staff, legal, commissioners are tasked with the requirement to pick which of those two definitions or parts of the definition this space more fits into. Is a community room and a gym more akin to somewhere where someone lives, sleeps, eats, or cooks, or is it more like a bathroom or a storage unit? I think staff's interpretation is correct. That's what I would say in a court of law, is that it is a living space. And I will reiterate, it does not say a private living space. So the people in this building would be coming into this community room and living. They're not there going to the bathroom, which is non-habitable. They're not in a closet. They're not in a storage or utility space. And I agree, a laundry room probably, in most cases, would be more like a utility space and would not qualify. You don't live in a utility space or in a laundry room. You do live in the spaces that are in this community room, and that's the interpretation. So I don't think there's been a change in the interpretation. I just think this project is different than the ones that have been sent back in the past.
So the private entry, we'll just skip over that part?
Nope, we're not skipping over that either. Again, private entry, and I think staff has regularly interpreted this way and in projects, and I agree from the legal side of it, it again does not mean private into a single unit. Private means taking you off the street and taking you into a private building. And so in this case, because it's a multi-unit building, it's the entrance to go into that building where there's a lobby and where you go up to your own private unit. So I don't think we're skipping over it at all. I think it's addressed, and that's it's there in the plans.
I appreciate your interpretation. I would suggest that perhaps the intent of the code be addressed, and the intent has always been that it's an active living space with active people there 24 hours a day. So I appreciate your legal interpretation, but I don't believe that it actually complies with the intent of the code as it was written. I'll move on.
Yeah, let's make sure we keep it to questions, please.
So I guess this is also for the architect. Back to that inclusionary unit, that one unit, the one bedroom.
Yes.
So you are saying that that one bedroom is not going to have any common open space or any parking lot, and that will be one of the 3 inclusionary units?
That's correct. It's not going to have a parking spot. Let me take a look at the drawings just.
There's no common open space on this, on the one bedroom.
On the one bedroom, we have a patio, but it doesn't, it actually counts as a small area, but it doesn't count per
mean
the
private
definition
open
of open.
space?
Correct, correct.
It's
No,
not open space.
it's not open space per definition.
Okay. And so and unit 102,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
help me understand how that works.
Which part? What do you
So on your callouts on the cover, you have unit 101, which is the one bedroom. Then you have unit 103. So it appears that in the plans, unit 102 went missing. Was that originally the gym, or was that originally the common room?
No, I apologize. My computer has locked up.
Can you help me follow to which heading on that sheet are you looking
It's
at?
in the bottom center on the open space tabulation.
Open space tabulation on the cover page. Okay,
Mhm.
thanks.
So on the first floor, it says that there's unit 101 and unit 103, but there's no unit 102.
Yes, that must have just been, because everything is now automatic through the programs that we use. That must have been just something that we missed when it was moving the names of the units around and
So-
the amenities.
When you removed unit 102, was that the common room or was that the gym? I'm assuming, is that how that works?
Open it. One and two. Oh, it looks like it's just like, it looks like basically we just fat fingered something with the numbers of 102. When you create and you move stuff around, because when we adjusted the first floor for the community lounge that DRS asked us to include, the lounge used to be the electric room and also the bike storage. When we moved the name of that and created a new room, it automatically populates with whatever's next in the sequence. So that's probably where some of the confusion happened. Because I'm looking here, and on our title sheet, it has 102 common first floor, 0 square feet. So that's just an error on the tabulation. And that probably led to the confusion on the numbering of the rooms. We apologize.
Okay. I think that's it for my questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions for the applicant or staff? No one? No? Going once, going twice? No more questions? I think I do not have any questions at this time either. We can close the public comment portion of the hearing, but one item we have not done yet is a design review subcommittee update. And I was wondering if Commissioner Jones, if you'd be willing to provide that at this time before we get into deliberation.
I absolutely can. Thank you. So just to reiterate, the design review subcommittee met about this project, had the hearing for this project on January 11th of this year. And there were a number of items in terms of feedback that we had regarding the project and the iteration in which it was presented to us at that meeting. I'm going to combine here notes that Chair Lombardi kindly shared with me in addition to some of the notes that I took from that meeting. So again, these are things that feedback that we had for the applicant in addition to items of discussion that we discussed with them, before it moved to us this evening. So one was looking at moving the outdoor rooftop area to the front facade. I think there was conversation about what people would be looking at or might want to look at. Two was the business center. I think we asked kind of, is this the best use of the space? I think the applicant answered that to our satisfaction, that they actually do get used, and we would defer to them on that. Also asked about the possibility of recessing the at-grade transformer and opening up the landscape space, opening up the community room and gym space to the outdoor areas, integrating workspaces within the units. There were comments about the city and climate action plan, the cement plaster facade. I think we discussed maybe moving to some alternate materials, which I believe has been addressed tonight where possible. I think there were some comments about it maybe looking dirty and not in alignment with the city's climate action plan. We talked a lot about shading on the rooftop, wanted to make sure their rooftops are patios or open spaces, very common now. We see it a lot, and I think we wanted to make sure that was kept comfortable during the day, especially with temperatures increasing. We did have a conversation about the tandem parking. There were originally, I believe, 30 spaces for this project, and those have been reduced, I think, to address some of that. And I believe, again, it is still, there's still more parking spaces than per minimum. So that was something that we talked about, was the minimum number of spaces required vis-a-vis what they presented at the meeting. I think we requested a shadow study to understand how their building impacts the adjacent buildings with shading, and refinement and use of previous paving where possible. I think let me look at my notes here very quickly. Let's see if there's anything that I missed. Again, we did talk about workspaces in the units, rooftop seating. Again, there was lots of conversation about the parking. I think we all agreed that it was kind of tight and shuffly with as many tandem spaces as there were. We also discussed the rationale behind the 2-bedroom units. There are a preponderance of 2-bedroom units in this project, and I think we discussed that. And I believe, unless I'm missing anything, that nicely kind of summarizes items of discussion and kind of feedback that we had for the applicant at that time.
Great, thank you so much. So unless there's any other questions right now of staff or applicant, then I do want to officially close the public comment portion of this meeting and move into deliberation, noting that we do reserve the right to ask questions of city staff or the applicant during the deliberations as necessary, should that come about in our conversations. And would anyone like to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, Commissioner Jones, thank you.
I never volunteer to do this, but I'm going to do it tonight. So I really want to address, just for posterity, because I do think it's really important, and I've said this a lot up here, but we often get comments from residents and neighbors who are upset about projects, and we are all residents of the city. It's actually a requirement of the Planning Commission appointment that you be a resident of the city of West Hollywood. So we're all in this together, and we're all up here representing you. But I do want to talk briefly about the Housing Accountability Act. I think that there is very much a perception that, projects kind of get pushed through. To one of the callers' comments, again, we always appreciate your time and want to hear your feedback. We can't do this job without you. I mean, we are you. But, I do kind of want to call out some of the, I don't want to say limiting factors, but some of the reasons why things are what they are. So you probably noticed on the agenda tonight, this particular public hearing applies, the Housing Accountability Act is pertinent to the item that we are hearing right now. And this is a state law that's been in effect since the early 80s and was developed to recognize that the lack of housing, including emergency shelter, is a critical statewide problem. Here we are 42 years later, it continues to be a problem. So it really empowers the state to be able to limit the ability of local government to restrict the development of new housing. So it was also amended in 2017 to actually make those laws stricter. It gives, essentially requires that municipalities have less leeway when it comes to not approving projects, especially ones that would include affordable housing. I'm like really summarizing right now, but I want you to understand that when it comes to discretion, yes, we are a discretionary body, but I want you to understand some of the kind of rules that surround what can be built. Essentially, we're not, in many cases, we're not able to reject something because of something like, you know, comportment with the character of the neighborhood, which is really not a reason that legally that we are allowed to abide by. It's also zoned for R3, so while there may be lots of single family or, you know, smaller housing units on a street like this or in this part of LA, of West Hollywood, I'm very familiar. I walk down that street all the time. It's actually zoned for R3. So I just want to be clear about kind of the reasons why a project like this, you know, might go through and kind of the guardrails for our criteria for consideration. All of that being said, you know, in being at DRS and then speaking with the applicant and then you know, the hearing tonight, I'm generally in support of this project. They did make a lot of the changes that we discussed at design review. I, for one, really appreciate that they are requiring or including more than the required amount of parking. You probably know that parking requirements have diminished significantly over the course of the past few years. And this provides more parking than is required. Candidly, a lot of times the lack of parking on streets is because of parking requirements that happened in this before we were a city. So like my building has 18 units and we have like 12 spaces. So this kind of, I think, goes above and beyond. I appreciate that so many of the tandem spaces were removed and that that's been, I don't want to say minimized, but that it's, I think I feel much better about the kind of the parking maneuverability and the tandem spaces now. Those are really my comments. I'm generally in support of the project. Most of the stuff that, you know, I had questions about coming into tonight's meeting have been addressed, especially heading out of design review. So I'm open to discussion on lots of other items, should people want to discuss them, but that's where I stand right now.
Okay, I'm going to go over to my left. So Commissioner Matos.
Thank you, Chair Lombardi. I also just want to highlight what Commissioner Jones just said. This is a Housing Accountability Act project, and you know, we're confined to working within state law and to working within local municipal codes, and sometimes you know, it's out of our hands. When we review these projects, we're using these different laws and regulations as a guiding light. You know, we're unable to make a determination based off of feeling or aesthetics, but we're only able to make a finding that if the project is denied, there's a risk to public health and safety, and it has to be cited and then be able to stand within a court of law. I don't see that here tonight. I actually, looking at this project, I think the design is pretty exceptional. There's an effort to create more green space, more trees in the community. These are a resource to everybody, and then of course the affordable units are a resource to everybody as well. So I plan to support this project, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Vice Chair Gregoire.
Well said, Commissioner Matos and Commissioner Jones. I don't really have anything to add. I do support the project as presented by staff today and amended by staff. So when the time comes, I will support a motion to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Solomon.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation tonight. I too also support the project brought here tonight. I asked the idiotic question when we got here of why are we here and why is this on the agenda, because I do recognize that we are in a housing crisis. It's the entire reason why I've become interested in this subject matter. And I bring up to ask, why do we even have discretionary review on this? Because as I understand it, if this project were located on a similarly designated parcel, similar zoning designation in the city of Los Angeles, it wouldn't even have discretionary review. It does here in the city of West Hollywood. We abide by the ordinance, and that's why we're here. But at the city council meeting 2 meetings ago, when they passed the budget, I heard the word streamlining mentioned over and over and over again. And I hope that at that level, as they take a look at ways in which to streamline our entitlement process in the city, I hope that they will also take a look at what it takes for a project to get to the Planning Commission and for the Planning Commission to actually have review over it. In this case, we are much more onerous in the city of West Hollywood than we are in the city of Los Angeles. My only comment on this project is that I wish there was more of a diversity of bedrooms offered, in that I wish that there were 3-bedroom units. I myself have a 20-month-old toddler who is a complete terror at home, and I live in a 2-bedroom condo, and I intend to raise my family and grow my family here in the city of West Hollywood, and there are no 3-bedroom units in the city. We don't have that as an option for our housing stock. And when I see a project like this that is located literally across the street from a school, I think about, I think all of us, we can't help but picture ourselves there, picture how we would fit in that environment. And a 3-bedroom in that space, being able to walk across the street and walk your daughter to school, that is an urban paradise to me. I recognize that because of code, and not just the West Hollywood code, but the international fire code, limits your ability to offer that sort of layout. I took a look at by my rough calculation, the square footage in floors 1 through 4 on the total square footage versus what is common and what is living. It seems like of the square footage of those first 4 floors, 86% is dedicated to living, but then 14% has to go to common space. And that's because you have to have the 2 staircases in there. So I hope that our city, if you were to only have 1 staircase, you could have the option for more studios or for 3 bedrooms. So I hope that our city will pursue the statewide reform of adopting the single staircase, single point access into our code. And yeah, those are my comments for tonight. I support the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carvalero?
I really appreciate that this applicant has worked so hard over the last many months to respond to our design comments, and I feel like they've integrated it pretty well. There are still a few things that could be tweaked, but I think that this project is ready to move forward, and I wholeheartedly support the project and would easily make a motion to approve the project as presented by the staff report.
Thank you. So, anyone else? Commissioner Hoopen-Gardner, would you like to speak and let us know your thoughts?
Yes, I'd like to reiterate, what Commissioner Jones brought up, and the fact of the matter is the Housing Accountability Act, which I affectionately call HA, is something that we all are required to comply with. But I also want to make a point of reading what it actually says, which is that when a housing development project complies with applicable objective general plan and zoning and subdivision standards, et cetera, then we must make those findings. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very clear about making sure that we are in compliance with the objective standards. And we have a number of objective standards that are often sort of waived, and not in a formal way, but in an informal way. And I am very uncomfortable with that informality. In particular, in the findings on the resolution, it states that this project complies with all applicable provisions of Article 19 of the Municipal Code, that this project meets all of the relevant general standards for property development and the specific standards for residential development in the R3B zone. I do not find that this complies with either the letter or the spirit of 19.36280. We have required other developers to return projects for specifically this issue. We had specifically the conversation with legal at the time about a living unit, and living means you live there. Your mailing address is there, your shoes are there, your grandmother's dishes are there. And I cannot make that finding. In addition, I cannot make the finding that the architectural elevations are, in fact, and I quote, treated in a compatible manner. The north facade is a wall with a couple of windows in it. There is no compatibility with the rest of the building. We've brought this up on other projects. I remember specifically a conversation with Commissioner Cavallero on a project in Sweetser that had a couple of very, very similar walls, and it was sent back. As far as the design is concerned, we've approved many buildings similar to this. Unfortunately, it doesn't do well in terms of our climate action plan. I can't, vote no based upon that. The airflow in this building, there's no shading on the south and west elevations, and I'm going to beg to disagree with staff in the staff report where they state that the city aims for ambitious targets, sustainable construction, et cetera, and that while this project may not meet all these lofty goals, these are not lofty goals. There are actual city policy. We have a sustainability policy. We have a climate action plan. And our objective should be to actually implement those policies and plans, and not treat them as lofty goals. That being said, we do need more housing, ostensibly, although we have 2,000 empty units in the city right now. The letter of the law says what the letter of the law says, but that letter says that as long as it complies with the objective standards. And unfortunately, I do not find that it complies with the objective standards, and I choose to be consistent in my votes across all projects and not vary my votes from project to project based on the same exact wording in the same code. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Hoopengarner. I'll add in my thoughts very briefly here, and apologies if I jump around. I'm generally in support of the project. I do think there are some aspects that maybe could have been addressed better, but there was a wholehearted effort to incorporate at least some of the feedback from design review. I will say I'll just get this out first. I'm a little bit concerned about the revised language with the parking setup, but there may be past precedent there, so I'm curious if there's any other thoughts on
Thank you for reminding me, because I meant to bring that up, and the fact that the one bedroom has no parking, I think, is a substantive issue.
Okay,
and
maybe
that affordable unit has no parking is a substantive issue.
Of course, and maybe we can just get a quick understanding on where we all align on that item then, noting Commissioner Hoopengarner's concern. From a design standpoint, I've never really liked the exposed rain gutters, and I do think some of the elevations could use refinement. One comment that I'll just provide right now, I saw a lot of 3,000 Kelvin lighting in the building, and I meant to ask about that earlier. 2,700 Kelvin would be much better on the facade, so easy change there. But in general, I think that we are very limited in terms of what our purview is today. Bless you. And also on that note, we do have the RHNA, Regional Housing Needs Assessment numbers to be met for the city, and we're supposed to get there one way or another. So it's something for us not to forget. And I understand some of my colleagues have made note about maybe how Los Angeles handles things and how we may have extra road bumps along the way, but I do truly believe that our city has a strong core value to think creatively, to invest in quality of life, when we build buildings, they want to be here for a long time. That's why we're coming from a point of care when we note all of these things that could be areas of improvement. And I mean, I don't know, I'm just going to say, look at the city of LA. There's some egregious things going on with housing. There's giant empty buildings. I mean, I don't even want to go there right now, and it's not related to this. So I'm appreciative that we have this opportunity. I also realize that, you know, we're mandated to approve housing where we can. So I am in support of this item. I would like to hear how we all feel about the parking setup. If we can go through, Commissioner Matos.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As long as I've been on this commission, the standard has always been to have the affordable units have the same amount of parking that is provided the market rate units. I think that's pretty standard. I think that there is a lot of precedent on that. My first meeting ever, there was a very spirited discussion with the great late Ed Levin about that. And I have no concern about keeping that consistent with the past projects as it relates to providing parking at the same rate as market rate.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Any commissioners have feedback?
I think, refresh my memory, but on the Viper Room, didn't we actually insist on that all of the affordable units have a parking space?
We did. And I remember that too, and I wasn't thinking further back. And I guess, I'm going to say it, I think the one difference is that that was a valet parking situation, so there was some more flexibility there, and so we felt that it was important to be abundantly clear since it seemed like it could be accommodated. That's what I recall from that, and that also got me thinking about this project. But, I mean, yeah, the reality is, I guess, no parking is required, regardless of what our city code says, so that's why I'm trying to understand how we all feel here and what the past precedent is.
Is there clarity from staff that can be given at this time?
So I can say that we don't have a specific standard that says how parking spaces are allocated, that it is true that the minimum parking requirement, sorry, am I not speaking to the microphone? That the parking requirement is 1/2 space per unit from the state, and we are not allowed to require more than that. And in fact, it is also true that with AB 2097, they could waive their parking standards as well. So I think that it would be difficult for us to require a certain number of parking spaces for specific units.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Gregoire.
You know, I'm always speaking out, and I'm expressing upset that developers are not including sufficient parking in new developments. I know we can't require it. I always have mixed feelings about it because I do wish people would get rid of their cars, but developers are simply not building enough parking for the city of West Hollywood at this point. If we can't require it, they don't build sufficient, and I don't believe there's sufficient parking for this building. But I believe it does comply with the law in the code. So, you know, while it would be great for that one bedroom to have a parking space, I don't think the law requires it. So I'm still prepared to approve the project without a parking space for that one bedroom.
Okay.
I guess the distinction I'd like us to really think through is it's not a one bedroom. It has already been designated as an affordable unit, and then that we continue to downgrade these affordable units. Now, in the past, the inclusionary units were never identified until after the project was complete. So that we developed the project, you know, the idea is that these all would be developed in exactly the same way, with the same finishes, et cetera. And there seems to have been a change in the past year or so where now the units are being identified at the beginning of the project. So the developer knows immediately up front which ones are inclusionary and how they might want to, frankly, strip away certain amenities for those projects. And is that really how we want to treat our affordable housing? It's meant to be on par with the market rate housing. That's why we say it needs to be distributed throughout the building. That's why we have all these other requirements. So for us to then say, well, that's okay, it's inclusionary, so we can strip the parking out of that one unit. And that's where I feel very uncomfortable with this.
I have a quick comment I'd like to make. My understanding is that we are not stripping any inclusionary unit of parking. We are using the same calculation for parking at half a space per unit as the market rate. They're receiving equal allocation of parking to market rate. If this were a stripping of affordable housing privileges that are entitled to them, I could assure you I would be drastically opposed to it, just personally. And like I've said, Commissioner Huppengartner, you've weighed in several times on the historical context and precedent and the importance of it. And here, there's both. We are not stripping the affordable unit of any privilege that they have a right to. We are providing it at the same calculation that is unbiased as the market rate units. I just wanted to clarify that.
Except for they also don't have any private open space.
Okay. I feel like what has been said, so unless there's more to add to that, I'm just curious if anyone else has questions, deliberation, if someone's looking to make a motion.
I will second Commissioner Carballero's motion.
Okay, and Commissioner Carvalero, if you would like to state your motion and if you're including the staff's recommendation in particular.
Yeah, I made a motion to approve the project as presented by the staff report.
Okay, and that is seconded by Commissioner.
By the staff report or as amended in the two amendments that staff presented?
With the amendments that
Okay,
staff
thank
presented.
you.
Okay, so motion to approve as amended per staff's report, seconded by Commissioner Matos. Are there any questions at this time? Any further discussion before we move on to voting? No? And we're already voting. What do you know? Okay.
And the motion passes on 6 ayes, noting Commissioner Huppengartner voting no on this item. We do have an appeal process for this project. The resolution the Planning Commission just approved memorializes the Commission's final action on this matter. This action is subject to appeal to the City Council. Appeals must be submitted within 10 calendar days from this date to the City Clerk's office. Appeals must be in writing and accompanied by the required fees. The City Clerk's office can provide appeal forms and information about waiver of fees, and the deadline will be Monday, July 29th, 2024 at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Does staff need time to reset, or is there any interest in a brief break? Yes?
I'm interested in a brief
Okay,
break.
you want to do 7 minutes? Okay, let's do a 7-minute break. Thank you. Thank you, David. Are we ready to proceed? Great. Thank you, everyone. Back from a brief break. Next item is item 11A, which is public hearings under Section 2. This is items that require a public hearing under the law. And today we have one item, item 11A, and this is regarding a zone text amendment to update the replacement requirements above lower income protected units in new housing projects and update provisions related to unit demolition in alignment with state law citywide in West Hollywood, California. And I believe that we will have a staff report now from Michelle Montenegro.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Michelle Montenegro, and I'm with the Long Range Planning Division of the Community Development Department. I anticipate this presentation will take about 10 minutes to complete. I'm sorry, we're just waiting for it to load up. There we go. Okay. So this item is for the replacement of above lower income protected units, or in other words, rent stabilized units. It's a zone text amendment. The Planning Commission may remember a similar item that came to them in March of last year. And so this is a revised item on the subject. So during my presentation, I'll be covering the history and background of the zone text amendment. Then I'll be going a little bit into the feasibility study for the specific requirement that's been adopted and is operating. Then I will detour into a little bit about Assembly Bill 1218, which became into effect January 1st of this year. And then I'll end with an overview of the proposed zone text amendment. So before we dive too deep into the actual replacement requirement, because the terminology is a little complicated in both state law and the staff report, I want to quickly do an overview of the type of units we're speaking about. SB 330, also known as the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, expanded demolition protections for housing development projects. It stated 4 types of protected units that these demolition protections would apply to. The first would be any income restricted unit. The second would be any form of rent control, which would be rent stabilization under Title 17 of the Code. The third would be any unit that was occupied or formerly occupied by a lower income household. And the last is any unit that was withdrawn from rent utilizing Ellis Act, which is the legal pathway to take out units from a rental market within the past 10 years. So the subject of this specific zone text amendment deals with the second category of units under rent stabilization. We are specifically talking about a subset of this category, in particular above lower income protected units, meaning that they're above 80% of the median area and income. All other lower income units have a pretty lateral move and is strictly or directly addressed in state code. So we have a decision to make as a city on how we address specifically above lower income protected units. The state gave jurisdictions the opportunity to address this by providing 2 different options. The first would be to replace the units as income restricted, lower income, and then the second one would be replacing these units as, once again, rent stabilized units. The city chose in 2022 to take a more middle of the road approach, going with neither option. We processed a zone text amendment that was directed by City Council in October of 2022. This would state the replacement requirement that was processed as a zone text amendment last year. It came before Planning Commission in May and then went to City Council in August, and then September for second reading and adoption. So just to summarize, our operating adopted replacement requirement reads as, if there are units that are subject to Title 17 of the Code, meaning that they're rent stabilized, they're also above lower income, meaning they're above 80% of the area median income, then they will be replaced up to this 35% of total units in the new proposed project. Any other remaining units would be subject to rent stabilized. So from now on, I'll be using the 35% replacement requirement as a shorthand to reference this requirement. So as part of that 2022 directive by City Council, they had simultaneously asked staff to conduct a feasibility analysis. This was launched last year, completed in spring of this year, and was presented in the findings to City Council in May. Just as a quick overview, the purpose was to understand the adopted replacement requirement on the financial feasibility of multifamily development in the city. This is once again the operating practice today, and the methodology that was established was that we would use 4 different types of housing typologies or prototypes. This was synthesized from 5 to 7 years of project data to understand representative types that exist throughout the city and that are varied to make sure that we're capturing the replacement requirement at every scale. The second portion of this methodology was to focus on what are the overlapping policies that also apply to housing projects within the city. First and foremost, the inclusionary housing requirement. Second, the optional use of density bonus. And then thirdly, we were controlling for the 35 replacement requirement. So we established 3 baseline tests or pro forma models that did not apply the 35 replacement requirement and 2 that did. We presented the key findings. So we ultimately determined that when testing across these different housing typologies, in all cases where the 35% replacement requirement was applied, it was infeasible, even when utilizing density bonus. There were a few projects when tasting for baseline that were feasible, but not across all housing typologies. This is generally due to the tight housing market that we're in, proving that even baseline projects without the 35% replacement requirement were considered infeasible. At this May 6, 2024 City Council meeting, City Council then took these findings and further directed staff to update the policy direction that was the original election provided by state. We would instead move our zone text amendment to require above lower income protected units be replaced solely as rent stabilized and none as income restricted. Taking that detour, I'll be explaining a little bit about Assembly Bill 1218. This is a new standalone article within the government code that separates demolition protections, where it used to live in the General Housing Crisis Act of 2019, and before that, density bonus. It expanded demolition protections by making sure that protected units existing or in the past 5 to 10 years would be replaced in the new development of any development project and not just housing development projects. So this includes non-residential. It would also ensure that protected units would be able to occupy their unit within 6 months of construction activities with proper notice. It also allow lower income occupants or tenants of these units to receive relocation benefits and the right of first refusal for a comparable unit in the new housing project. So to quickly overview the proposed zone text amendment tonight, there's 2 main components here. The first is the new policy direction provided by City Council based on the feasibility study that was shown to them in May. This new direction reflects a replacement requirement that would solely require rent stabilized units with no income restricted units for above lower income protected units. The second component would be addressing AB 1218 to ensure that demolition protections apply to any development project and not just housing development projects, and also to do some cleanup and reference the new demolition section of state code. So the first component of the zone text amendment would modify section 1922-030. This is our affordable units required, also known as inclusionary housing ordinance. The first paragraph changes the state code or references the correct state code. The second paragraph references the city's election, now to replace all above lower income protected units as rent stabilized. The third paragraph also references the correct state code. Again, that's the same thing for section 1922-050, which is also known as our density bonus ordinance. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Are there any questions of clarification from the staff report at this time? Yes, Commissioner Matos.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions for staff. Do we have any idea on the percentage or number of buildings in West Hollywood that are currently RSO?
So about 45% of all residential buildings within the city are RSO.
Okay, perfect. And then I just have two quick clarifying questions. If this zone text amendment were in effect and a building with above lower income tenants were demolished, are the new replacement units that would be required in this written zone text amendment then offered, they're rent stabilized, but are they then offered when they come back online at market rate?
So the Costa-Hawkins Act per state code prohibits vacancy control. So once the new unit is being built, it could be set at market rate by the developer or landlord.
Okay, so for example, if it were a luxury building, it would be reinstated at market rate, but it would be RSO. So for example, they could charge a market rate of $4,000 a month, but it would be an RSO unit.
Correct.
Okay. One more question. Once a new tenant occupies the new rent stabilized units in that example, and they later move out, does the price of the unit then get reoffered at the new market rate?
The price of the unit, once vacated, can be offered at market rate once again.
So if it comes online at, my example was $4,000 a month rent stabilized, once that tenant moves out, they could bump it up to the current market rate based on whatever that is X amount of years later.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Solomon?
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to get some clarity on Title 17 on our rent stabilization ordinance. I guess the way that I generally understand it, it's basically just a point in time. If a building was built before July 1st, 1979, it's rent stabilized, rent controlled unit, and if it was built afterwards, it's not. Is that accurate?
Generally, yes. Yeah.
So do we have any mechanisms within the code, within our code, that allow, prior to this proposed ETA, that allow for the creation of newly built rent-controlled units?
The only very narrow scenario that could happen is units being withdrawn through Ellis Act and they were to violate Ellis Act, then it would become back as rent stabilized units. There's a condition that we utilize in our resolutions in our code that says that.
If someone violated the Ellis Act, you said?
Correct.
Do you know offhand if that has ever happened before?
I don't know of any instance.
So I guess, is it fair to say that we are creating this proposal is a original new creation of rent stabilized units within West Hollywood that previously, outside of this Ellis Act violation, which you mentioned, our code does not provide for?
I would say yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I do have one question. If you could help me understand, it certainly does not feel like my area of expertise here, how this would apply with regards to a single-family housing. Let's say someone wants to develop a new property. If it were the owner lived on the unit, versus if there were a renter in the unit and it were rent controlled, and versus if there were like an ADU that were being rented as part of that as well, since ADUs are now becoming more common and rented.
Sure. So I would, despite the unit type that exists, protected units are classified the same way. So if there's a tenant that's rent stabilized, they are considered a protected unit. If there's an owner that's lower income, they're considered a protected unit. The only case that this would not apply is if there is a tenant there for less than 30 days or short-term rentals. But every other scenario where they qualify under those 4 categories, they would be considered a protected unit regardless if they're single family.
Okay. It may be less likely that that is a scenario, but if it were, that's how it would apply.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. David, are there any public speakers on this item?
I have no public speakers in council chambers. We do have one public speaker on the Zoom platforms. I'll turn that over to Jenny.
Hello. Caller with the last four numbers, 9751. You have 3 minutes. Please dial *6 to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. James Francis Wendell, resident of West Hollywood. I spoke earlier. I just wanted to reiterate and mention the crucial endeavors that the city is trying to make in resolving the housing crisis that has been ongoing. And to reiterate what Commissioner Jones has said, 42 years. This is an ongoing dilemma that Beverly Hills, Santa Monica, and West Hollywood, the epicenters of how the Costa-Hawkins Act, as well as rent stabilization took effect in these cities, yet we are the most egregiously higher priced units in the county. To reference what one commissioner just said, $4,000. Do you see how ridiculous that sounds? We were talking about a rent stabilized unit at $4,000. I'm in favor of having fixed units that are mandatory. We have to mandate, we have to codify language that ensures that people who would otherwise be priced out at even the current price points, on average, anywhere from $2,600 to $3,800 is not unfathomable in the city of West Hollywood. And it changes by block, literally block to block, it changes. From Crescent Heights all the way to Doheny, you see how one bedrooms and studios are going for astronomical prices. We have to basically mandate as a city that we have to look at resolutions of how are we going to achieve affordable housing without diminishing it. Rent control, existing rent control, is not going to happen when we bounce it to market rate. That's happened in my old unit. I was renting for $1,000 to $1,200 when I moved out, and now it is at $2,400. And that's because I was on Section 8. I had a voucher. Can you imagine those people who are not eligible or won't be able to afford even the minimum? You have more moderate housing, moderate income housing, higher income housing, but yet now we have to categorize very low income, extremely low income. Do you see how obnoxious that is? We have to implement protections so people who are low income do not get priced out, get forced out, or admonished or shamed to live in this city. Or landlords saying, move somewhere else that's affordable. This is county jurisdiction. What are we supposed to just move to the city of LA? I know we share borders, but we have to find where people like me won't be forced out eventually. I lived here for 13 years, then I have to count year by year or remain in an affordable unit through the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation because the city has failed, abject failure. To reiterate what Commissioner Solomon and Jones said, we need this resolution with housing obligations of achieving
Thank you.
housing needs assessment and everything else. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Confirming there's no one else in the room that'd like to make a public comment. If you do, please dial *6 or raise your hand feature. Thank you.
And Chair, that looks like it is our last public speaker for this item.
Okay, thank you. Any other? Oh, staff would like to make a clarification or has something to say. Thanks.
We have a quick correction from Commissioner Solomon's question earlier. So there is a small other pool of RSO that can be developed when there is a property and a house on that property that was built before 1979 and there's an ADU constructed. That main house will then be RSO, if that makes sense.
So if there's a house that's built before 1979 and you build an ADU and you want to put that out on the market, you may elect, it is
The main house.
You may choose.
It is.
It is.
Yes.
And that's part of the ADU pilot program that
No, that's just the rent stabilization ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions of staff? No? Okay. Deliberation?
I move approval of staff's recommendation.
Okay. Motion?
I have some comments.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and I'd also like to make a motion, but I'll state some comments first. I've definitely dug deep into this item because I think I can speak for all of us on that, but I'll just speak for myself. Housing affordability is important. It is. I think, at least me in my life, I've personally experienced, the value of rent control and affordable housing that's available at a reasonable rate. I'm someone who personally believes that we could have it all. We can have rent stabilized housing. We can have income aligned, deed restricted affordable housing. We can have development, new development, and additional units being brought online to meet our RENA goals. I personally believe that we can have it all. I definitely understand where we're at with this item. Ultimately, the original council directive was to have a one-for-one replacement and the replacement units be income-aligned, deed-restricted affordable housing to ensure their affordability in perpetuity. When the feasibility study was done, they found that in those examples, with a 35% replacement, it would make the project infeasible. It would make it not pencil, which would then thwart development. I think that there is a real need to, and then subsequently, there was another council directive that came to look at having this bring a one-for-one replacement of rent-stabilized units, which is important. It's important that we have rent-stabilized housing stock, but I think the point is that it's also important to have housing that's truly affordable. We can't unhouse one group of people to house another group of people. I think that's wrong. I really racked my brain on this item because affordable housing is so personally important to me, and its availability and accessibility in the city. We're all selected up here. We're not elected. This is a council directive ultimately, and I believe that our job, as it relates to this item, is to provide guidance and recommendations to the city council. I've had discussions with some folks, and we've racked our brains on this, Commissioner Solomon. I think one thing that I would like to see considered, at least as a tool in the tool belt, so that we're achieving an adequate affordable housing mix, is to see the city council actually consider to achieve feasibility of a project in certain circumstances to allow for additional local density, supplemental local density, that would allow the replacement units to be income aligned, deed restricted affordable housing in line with the original council directive. I think that if there is an opportunity to explore that, I think it would be highly appropriate. Even if it were a mix, where sometimes it's a one-for-one replacement with RSO, and sometimes it's a certain percentage with deed-restricted affordable housing in exchange for, some calculation of additional local density. I think that should be considered. I would just, hate to see units that go from a reasonable, affordable rate because of when they were built, come offline and then move to market rate. I think that is it could be creating another problem. So I think it should be explored. I don't know the feasibility of it. I'm going to be honest with you. It's just an idea. But I would like to propose that as an option for us to present to City Council as a recommendation, at least to consider local, to consider an opportunity to have the units be replaced with deed restricted affordable housing. Some sort of local opportunity for some calculation of additional density to accommodate that versus an RSO, a simply RSO unit. So those are my comments. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on it. I'd love to make a motion with that recommendation. And ultimately, it's the decision of the body. Thank you.
Thank you. That does sound like a little bit more complicated or substantial discussion. And there was a motion, although no second.
I have additional comments.
And so, yeah, why don't we pause for a minute and we'll get more comments. Commissioner Hoopengarner?
I would agree with much of what Commissioner Matos has said. This original state law was actually written to allow jurisdictions with existing rent stabilization to choose if the replacement housing had to be 100% affordable or rent stabilized in order to protect the existing housing stock and the existing renters. So the fact that every project in every opportunity on every lot doesn't pencil, it's not our job. And we seem to be, again, very inconsistent about, oh, we're all for affordable housing. Not so much. And in this case, the state gave us the power, knowing that that some of these projects wouldn't pencil, to make a determination. Do we want everything to be rent stabilized or everything to be affordable? And if we're being consistent with our goals, with our general plan, and everything that everybody keeps saying about how important affordable housing is, then we need to be consistent with that. When this first came through Planning Commission, we said affordable housing, 100%. And that's how we voted. And that's been how many years now at this point? And again, at a time when we have more than 2,000 vacant units in this city, it's not an issue of, do we need more housing? It's an issue of, where's our affordable housing? Because they wouldn't be vacant if they were, in fact, affordable. And rent stabilization doesn't make them affordable because they're on the market, so they're at market rate, whatever that means. So we have an opportunity to go back to the start and say, no, we should be making these 100% affordable. And that would be my vote. It is how Council Member Meister voted when this came up before Council. I don't understand myself why Council wouldn't insist on 100% affordable, given who we are as a city and what our goals are. So as recommended by staff, I cannot vote for this. I'm willing to look at alternatives and other ways to achieve what the intent of this was from the get-go. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Solomon?
Thank you. And bear with me, this is a pretty complicated subject matter, a doozy for the first one. I am, in this sort of have-it-all approach, I am for one-to-one replacement housing. But I am of the opinion that rent control doesn't work. And I know that's the third rail of West Hollywood is to attack rent control, but I think rent control has been pretty proven to not actually address affordable housing. It addresses, it is an insurance policy to ensure that you don't get priced out of where you live. And there's value in that, but it's a pretty blunt tool to actually address affordability. It freezes a city in time, it freezes a building in time, and I think there's a reason why we basically don't allow for the creation of new rent-controlled, rent-stabilized units in West Hollywood. And we're not the only jurisdiction, but we do have uppercase A affordable housing tools that we do use. We use income-aligned, deed-restricted affordable housing, something that goes to the needy, those that actually need it. Rent control doesn't do that. It's who's ever lucky enough to get there at that place in time to lock in a rate. Income-aligned, deed-restricted affordable housing, in my opinion, is much preferred over that of rent-controlled units. However, we've gone through 2 years of this and had a feasibility study, and you're telling me that what was proposed previously, where the replacement would be deed-restricted, income-aligned affordable housing doesn't pencil out. And that's a problem. I think the most natural tool to provide lowercase a affordable housing is supply. However, we limit supply. We artificially regulate supply, and we do it through zoning, through density zoning. So I am of the mind where I do see the value, and I do believe in one-to-one replacement housing. Then you get to what kind of affordable housing, rent-controlled housing or income-aligned, deed-restricted affordable housing. I much prefer the latter, but you're telling me that that doesn't pencil under the current standards. So I would support some sort of mechanism. I know we can't do it tonight with what council directive has given to us, but I would support some sort of mechanism where you do replace one-to-one and you replace income-aligned deed-restricted affordable housing, but there's a local density bonus that you get so that you can have enough market rate units in your new building. You get a bonus, and you can have enough market rate units in your new building to support the number of income-aligned, deed-restricted affordable units that you have to bring over, because the rule is a one-to-one replacement. So if you're going to bring them over and replace them, you get a bonus to build higher, to build taller, and to build more, and that cuts at what I think is the greatest tool for providing lowercase a affordable housing, which is supply. So it is a complicated subject matter and also a complicated motion to make, and I will not be the person to make it because I think I'll do it incorrectly, but I would support anyone that would, if anyone else agrees, I would support any recommendation that aligns with that.
Thank you. And I would love to hear from more commissioners. And I'd say, maybe we'll see a through line where there can be some comments that can be provided back to City Council. Yes, Vice Chair Gregoire.
Obviously, as a rent stabilization commissioner for like 17 years, I obviously agree with Commissioner Solomon and Commissioner Meadows. I was quick to move staff's recommendation because I actually believe that staff's recommendation reflects the vote of the City Council on May 6, 2024. They directed staff to process a ZTA, eliminating the requirement to replace demolished rent-stabilized units that were also occupied by households or individuals above low income, 80% or higher median income, in a proposed housing development as deed-restricted affordable deed-restricted affordable units, but maintaining the replacement units subject to rent stabilization. As I said, I'm on board with what you guys are saying, but the City Council, the elected City Council, has determined that we should change the ordinance and replace it with a requirement that the replacement units be subject to rent stabilization. I feel like staff's recommendation today is carrying out that direction from the City Council, so that's why I was quick to move the recommendation.
Commissioner Carvalero was next, but maybe Commissioner Matos, you have something quick?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very quick. Thank you for that, Vice Chair Gregoire. Sorry, I'm still getting used to it. I actually entirely agree with you. I would just want to clarify the intent of my motion. As I've said, we're selected, we're not elected, and I think that the governing body of this city, that we're duly elected by the residents of this city, ultimately should make this decision. But I do think that it is our job to provide perspective and potential outside of the box thinking and other ways of looking at this issue to achieve the goal of preserving affordable housing. So just to clarify, my motion would be to move the staff recommendation.
Excuse me, are you making a substitute motion?
No,
Well, we have a motion without a second.
No,
so-
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to describe the intent of what I was saying.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying it's this motion that I would make, it wouldn't be to circumvent council directive. It would not be to disturb that, but it would be to say, here is another opportunity for the city to consider as a long-term solution to ensure that affordable housing access is preserved in the city, and that when units are taken offline that would otherwise be affordable, here's an option for the City Council and the city to explore should they choose to utilize, a tool in the tool belt for them to utilize and consider that would get us to that goal. And like I said, it doesn't have to be a one-size-fits-all approach. It could be that some buildings, they're replaced with a rent stabilized because it wouldn't pencil. And then others, in other situations, if there was some sort of local density consideration to accommodate it, maybe it does pencil when they are replaced with deed restricted, income aligned, affordable housing. So it would be more to an exploratory statement for the council to discuss and make a directive or not, should they choose. But just obviously as a body that would send that message that, perhaps there's another way to look at this to achieve an appropriate mix of affordable options, whether that be rent stabilized housing, deed restricted, income aligned affordable housing, and then not totally thwarting development and making development infeasible, because the reality is we have an aging housing stock in the city. A lot of the housing was built pre-1979, and you can take care of a property, some people don't. But regardless, at some point, it's going to become uninhabitable, and we have to consider that reality. So with all of those things in considerations, to Commissioner Gregoire's clarification and to everyone's clarification, my motion would not be to circumvent council directive. It would be to add a recommendation for consideration by the governing body of the city from us, versus just sending it with no input at all.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like, Commissioner Matos, you may have a substitute motion. I'd love to hear from Commissioner Carvalero. I have a couple of quick thoughts to build on your suggestion as well.
Yeah, I'm on board with what Commissioner Matos and Solomon have suggested. Can you hear me? So I'm on board with what they have suggested. It's interesting, the idea of doing a localized bonus density, because for the 8 years that I've been on Planning Commission, everybody complains about more density, more height, and so I feel like if it did go down that road, we need to reach out to our community and let them know that the city is fundamentally changing in character, and this is why. So I'm just thinking ahead, given everything that we have heard to date, and even tonight we heard it from several public comments. Again, it's an interesting notion. I think it's worth exploring, and I would support it.
Great, thank you. I think, first of all, everyone has such amazing feedback on this. Commissioner Jones, did you have something to say?
No, just that I have appreciated everyone's thoughtful comments. I also would be inclined to support Commissioner Matos's, motion in this, again, in the spirit of, we are making a recommendation to council. We would like this to be something that they consider discussing or not, or that they consider moving forward with or not. But I do think it merits discussion, and I would be open to that.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I really love this discussion. So I could add a ton, but I do want to keep things speeding along. So I share some of the sentiment that's been discussed, especially what you are mentioning, Commissioner Matos and Commissioner Solomon, and also Commissioner Carvalero. And I think a couple of quick thoughts would be, well, one, I wonder if our urban design and architecture studio could potentially explore creative ways to look at density that may have less of an impact on buildings becoming cost prohibitive because they are trying to accommodate, existing housing stock and rates into a structure and then making it economically infeasible. Maybe there's something they can do with modeling or something like that looks at more economical ways that buildings could increase in density. And then perhaps we need to get community involvement as well, so that we're not just building up without thinking about other impacts that the community may be concerned about, that they understand where things are headed. That would be my suggestion. I think you had a motion, Commissioner Matos. I don't know if there's more discussion or if you want to restate your sub-motion or your substitute motion.
Yeah, so my motion would be to move the staff recommendation of the council directive and to include as a recommendation to the City Council in a formal way, not verbally, but in writing, that the Planning Commission recommends exploring opportunities for additional local density bonus to accommodate the replacement of units with deed-restricted, income-aligned, affordable housing. And now, I want to clarify some things there. This does not have to be a one-size-fits-all. This could be a case-by-case basis. There could be projects that are more feasible to have replaced with RSO, and there could be opportunities where the project actually pencils with a couple more market rate units to replace the previous units with income-aligned, deed-restricted, or affordable housing, which makes it affordable in perpetuity. So I think that is the intent, is to look at the all-hands-on-deck approach and not have it be a one-size-fits-all, but who knows what council comes back with, and ultimately that's not our decision, but just to explore that opportunity, looking at local density incentives to allow for the replacement of previously occupied above lower income units with income-aligned, deed-restricted, affordable housing.
Commissioner Carvalero? No? Okay.
Was just supporting it.
Can I second that motion?
Sure,
Or is
motion
there
and
more
second.
discussion to be had?
There may be some additional discussion, but we have a motion and a second.
I understand the intent, and it's interesting the way you're headed. I think the concept of creating some sort of variable metric, you do affordable, but you don't, I think that's very problematic and impossible to codify. I'd be curious if someone could come up with a way to codify that. So I'm a little concerned about going down that slope, because I just don't see that as a good use of our time to try and, pick and choose, oh, this project gets to do that, but this project doesn't. And now we're back to some of my earlier complaints about inconsistency, and I would feel very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, I believe the motion is a recommendation, just to kind of reframe that from what I understand, but you can clarify your motion.
Yeah, I definitely understand that perspective. The historical and historical context and precedent is important. We've talked about this, Commissioner Hoopengarner.
Well, it's just practicality.
Yeah, and practicality. The reality is that we don't have full information to make an indefinite finding this evening, but it would be incumbent upon, if they so desire, the City Council to make the decision, and then City staff to suss out what would be the most feasible way to operationalize this and execute it within the city. I don't want to. My whole point is I don't want to tie the hands of staff or the recommendation to one path. I just think that there are many paths that could get to the goal of the intended outcome, which would be preserving affordable housing in this city. Like I said, I don't think it's right to, unhouse one group of people to house a different group of people. I think that we need to keep units that are available and affordable and reasonably priced online. So that's just the spirit behind it. But I agree with you. Yeah. So I think it would be incumbent upon the staff. And I also don't, just to clarify one other thing, I don't want to pigeonhole this to UDOS. I'd love to see the Community Development Department also weigh in on this, just to clarify that point, so that it's truly an all hands on deck should council decide to even consider this, right? Because that's what it all comes down to. But it's just giving them an option to consider as they make the decision from us.
Commissioner Jones, did you have anything to? No? Okay. Appreciate the additional insight. We have an alternate motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? And is staff clear on the motion?
So yeah, just to clarify, it sounds like we are moving with staff's recommendation with the addition of a recommendation for council to consider starting allowing additional local density bonus to accommodate the replacement of above lower income units to be deemed restricted affordable.
Yeah, designated affordable.
Designated affordable.
Yeah, so income aligned affordable in perpetuity.
To be deed restricted, income aligned, affordable units in perpetuity.
It doesn't have to be exactly that. That's just, I'm just clarifying the intent. Sorry, it's a mouthful.
Okay.
It's a term of art that I made up
We
right.
will include that as is, just in, I think it'll make sense.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote? It's already up.
I just want to clarify that my no vote revote relates to the staff report. I do not agree with the staff report. I think it should be 100% affordable. It has nothing to do with your additional recommendation.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for the clarity. I understand.
And that motion passes with voting with 6 ayes and noting Commissioner Hoopengarner's no vote. There is no appeal process. This is a recommendation going forward to City Council.
Thank you. That brings us to item 12A, which is Planning Commission Subcommittee appointments. So the Planning Commission Chair will review and make appointments to the following subcommittees for terms ending June 30th, 2025. And there's 3 subcommittees: the Design Review Subcommittee, the Long Range Planning Subcommittee, and the Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee. So I'm going to start with the Long Range Planning Subcommittee. For that subcommittee, Commissioner Solomon, Commissioner Gregoire, and Commissioner Matos as chair. And then for Design Review Subcommittee, myself, Commissioner Carvalero, and Commissioner Hoopengarner as chair. And then Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee. So I'm just going to preface this by saying I thought I was going to have to give a pep talk to get people on board with subcommittees, but actually we have a lot of people that are really excited to be engaged. So for now, just for now, I think it's important to have consistency to avoid any potential Brown Act violations, given that we've had some recusals relating to billboard projects. Also, Isaac Rosen and Lauren Langer, our city attorneys that regularly are here, are out, and so there's some questions that I had as well. So I feel like it would be great to ensure we have a fully staffed SASE, Sunset Arts and Advertising Subcommittee. So my thought is to revisit this again and potentially consider options that may allow us some flexibility if there need to be recusals, and I'll leave it at that. That may need to be agendized. So I want to keep the composition the same for now. So that would be myself, Commissioner Jones, and then Commissioner Matos rotating in as chair. And have I covered everything? Is that clear, David?
Yes, that is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So now we will move on to item 13, unfinished business, and there is none. Item 14, which is the excluded consent calendar. Again, no items. Item 15, items from staff. 15A, planning manager's update.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to provide you an update of upcoming meetings. So at the August 1st Planning Commission meeting, you will be hearing a zone text amendment regarding micro units. That's part of our housing element implementation. You will also be getting an update from the Urban Design and Architecture Studio on some of the work that they've been doing. So that's for August 1st. There's also an update. It must be a 6-month or a 1-year update, I think, for the project at 8383 Santa Monica Boulevard. I believe that's Barry's Boot Camp, so that's probably a requirement of the conditions of approval. For the design review subcommittee.
Any questions quickly on the items? I have one.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay. I just, do you know if that's going on consent calendar, 8383 Santa Monica Boulevard?
It's on consent,
Okay,
correct.
thank you. And then item 15B, subcommittee management. You're moving on to subcommittee management?
Sorry, I think I jumped to that one. Yes.
Yeah, no worries.
No
Yeah.
problem.
I wanted to get that question out before you rolled too far along.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Nothing for design review scheduled at the moment. Nothing scheduled for SASE either. For the long range planning project subcommittee, we are reviewing some of what was discussed today regarding ministerial permit processing for affordable housing projects and in some additional legislative housing bills. So that'll be coming to you on August 15th. There is also a second item, which we may have to split because it might be a lengthy discussion. It's a zone text amendment regarding office to residential conversions, which is also part of our housing element implementation and part of our potential toolkit to basically increase housing development in the city. So that's for long range planning subcommittee on August 15th. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 16, public comment. David, are there any public comment speakers?
Chair, we have no public comments in council chambers. We do have a couple people left on Zoom, so if there is anybody that would like to make a general public comment, please star 9 for me. If you're calling in, use the raise hand feature, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Caller with the number 9751, please use star 6, and you have 3 minutes.
Did we lose?
Housing. And
I'm
I
sorry.
just wanted to mention.
We couldn't hear you, the first part of your
Okay.
public comment. Would you start over, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Jamie Francis Wendell, resident of West Hollywood, an advocate of affordable housing, a recipient of affordable housing, and I otherwise would not be in the city after 13 years if I did not have an option, and luckily, I did not have many options decades ago. I would like to say that going forward in the next couple of sessions, you will see that staff report are going to include affordable housing options that we have to find alternatives. And I just have to emphasize, I really do appreciate what the commission does with assessing, because when you look at the builder's remedy of the state, the regional housing assessment needs of the county and the state, the housing mitigation that we have to do locally in the county and the city, inclusionary housing, all of these things, including affordable housing. I understand that Commissioner Hoopengarner had said, well, we have 2,000 vacant units, but the thing about it is those are not listed as affordable. And this is what I want to emphasize. Whoever is developing these and contracting to the city to develop these units, people cannot afford to move into them. That now we have to worry about micro units or think about micro units or conversions of AD or properties to include ADUs or commercial to residential, because there is a negligence on the part of developers or landlords who are trying to skirt around the housing laws, or in essence, try to appreciate the value of their property by selling it and either kicking out existing tenants if they're multiple rentals and they're not protected by rent control, or by default can't afford the rents anymore because the rent increases, or they're finding ways to use them as short-term rentals because this city did not address the ordinances at hand that decimated the affordable rental market because of landlords who used it as an excuse to increase their income by not informing the city, and there were no inspections of how they were abusing the housing law ordinances. That's why we have to codify language. That's why staff report today said this is what we need to do to mitigate the losses or prevent future losses. So I emphasize that this is something that we have to do by state law, And I know that objectively residents are opposed to it, and we don't want it, and I want my little community and my little village. However, look where we are 40 years after incorporation. We are still talking about this because there is lack of affordable housing. It is ridiculous. We have to find solutions because apparently the city didn't do something right 20, 30 years ago, or even at least 10 years ago, when they should have implemented and enacted things that we're talking
Thank you
about
so
now.
much. Your time is
So
up.
thank you for your time.
And Chair, that is our last public speaker.
Okay, thank you. Then that leaves us with item 17, items from commissioners. Would anyone like to say anything at this time? Commissioner Hoopengarner?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. First of all, welcome, Commissioner Solomon. I think you had a very interesting first outing. I'd also have a request of staff, which is kind of a repeat request. This evening, there was a neighborhood meeting regarding a new development, and it was scheduled exactly opposite a planning commission meeting. And I realize that the schedule is challenging, but I really feel that we should do everything in our power to make sure that our citizens don't have to choose between a neighborhood meeting related to a development that they want to attend and attending our meetings. Obviously, we have a vast public here that is very interested in everything that we're doing, but I gotta think they're all on YouTube watching us in their PJs. But I do think it's really important that we do everything in our power to not create those conflicts. Thank you.
Commissioner Solomon?
I just want to say thank you so much for having me here. All of you have reached out and just said welcome, like before this meeting, just through text or whatever, and that means a lot. I feel closer to some of you already than I did to the last commission I was on. It's a very welcoming group to be a part of, and I'm glad to be a part of it. And thank you so much to staff for doing everything you can to get me up to speed. It may not be enough, but that's on me and not on you. So thank you to all of you who have helped prepare me to be up here. It's a great group, and if I haven't sat down yet and had a coffee or a drink, you can expect that invite to come soon. And it's either that or you get to go to a playground in West Hollywood with me while we sit on the side and you watch my daughter terrorize the other toddlers on the playground, as Chair Lombardi witnessed this past weekend. But thanks to everyone, and looking forward to getting to know everyone even better.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Commissioner Jones?
I feel like we're all going to talk. I do just want to welcome you to commission. I think we work very well together. I really think, especially right now, I really do think that we're good at being respectful of each other and working collegially, even when we don't agree, which I think this country could use to see a lot more of that. So welcome, and I'm also just very happy to be back. Never thought I'd think of planning commission as like, a vacation from my home, but it can be right now with my 4-month-old. So I'm very happy to see all of you again.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Matos?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to welcome Commissioner Solomon to this body. I've had the privilege of getting to know Commissioner Solomon and his wife and his daughter Silver before he joined us here, and I think that they're great people and they're great residents and they truly care for other people. So I think I was really excited to see you appointed here. So excited about that. I want to welcome back Commissioner Jones to the body. You were missed for sure. I also just want to applaud you. I think that the example that you set in this city, that you can be a planning commissioner and you can have a child, and you can go on maternity leave, and you can come back, and you can continue to serve the city with pride. I think it's a testament to your character. I think it's a testament to everything that the city stands for with women's rights, and I'm really excited to have you back, truly.
Thank you. I watched the Viper Room meeting from the comfort of my home, so.
Yeah, that was a late one. I wasn't here either. Yeah, and I want to congratulate Chair Lombardi on a great first meeting as chair. Great job. I think that the discussion was spirited, and I loved it. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Matos. Anyone else? Okay, well, I'll just add my 2 cents as well. I do want to say, well, first of all, thank you for watching me fumble through my first official meeting as chair. And I really, really did appreciate the intelligence that everyone had today. I feel like everyone has a place of complete care in the community. And although we may be passionate about how we feel about things, we work through it all and try to find lines. You're all such wonderful and intelligent. Just like so grateful that I get to be here with all of you, and to be chair on this commission. And you know, likewise, congratulations, Commissioner Jones, on returning. And I think it's really important because you bring a lot of history here, and like you should be able to carry that along. And I think we're going to be relying on you for some of that, as well as Commissioner Hoopengarner and Commissioner Solomon. You had a lot of contributions already in your first meeting, so I'm impressed. And I just hope that we can continue to set an example of how we can have our opinions and be thoughtful about it all, and move things along and set a really good example. Because I know there's not a lot of trust right now in public process, but I think we all take this seriously, and I know I do, and so I'm very grateful for that, and I just wanted to say that tonight. Thank you. And on that note, unless there's any other comments, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. It is 9:30 p.m., and we'll be adjourned to a regularly scheduled meeting on Thursday, August 1st, 2024, right here at Council Chambers.